We had been talking about writing a book together for a couple of years, and we said, well, we know we want to include our story, which has a good story, but we also need to go into those places where people have really would identify with the harder places, such as the story with my mom and her mom. And we have some things that we talk about, the difficulties that we needed to navigate. And so it really came together over Christmas one year. We were sitting down, had time together, and we outlined the book. And then, as God only could do, he sent a publisher to us who had inquired about our putting this together, putting a book together. So we wrote it together, and we have our different viewpoints in the book. You see some passages from me. You see my mom's perspective. My mom has a doctorate in counseling, so there's just a lot of wisdom that she has brought to this conversation. And we feel like we're offering something unique, because some books will talk about hard conversations, but they don't give you the tools to necessarily then initiate those types of conversations.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to bring to the table in this book.
And as you mentioned, your mom she has a doctorate in counseling. Her name is Helen McIntosh, and spent quite a bit of time in Montgomery growing up, correct?
She sure did. Yeah, Montgomery is such a wonderful home for our family. We've loved it, and we're just so grateful for the way that God used some of the experiences that she had there in Alabama to go forth. And she started doing counseling work, and a lot of things came out of some of the painful years that she had in Montgomery. But we're grateful for this station and for the ways that you allow us to just express our stories, and that's what a lot of this book contains.
Well, let's talk from a spiritual standpoint. How does the matters of addressing relationship issues biblically, being able to ask for forgiveness, being able to seek right relationships, not having unforgiveness come between people, and in this case, mothers and daughters, address the spiritual aspects of mending relationships?
You know, the spiritual aspect, really how Proverbs 4:23 says, "For guard your heart, for out of it the issues of life will flow." And so, it is so important to take a check of your heart on a continual basis. And when there's something in your heart that needs to be addressed, if you continue to stuff it down and keep it in your heart, it will come out in an unhealthy way. It might come out through anger. It might come out through just the way that you handle people. Relationships are affected, not just with mother and daughter, but it's so important to address those issues in our hearts. With forgiveness, God calls us, doesn't he? He's in Jesus, when asked, how many times should I forgive? That number was an eternal number. There isn't just one time that you ask for forgiveness, and there isn't just one time that you offer forgiveness. So it's a continual process, I believe.
Well, as we conclude, there may be a situation where you may have a daughter and the mother is not open to reconciling when there's been a conflict or an issue that has driven them apart. Could be the other situation. You have a mom that so desperately wants to reconcile with her daughter, but the daughter's not open to it. You may have a situation where it's physically impossible to have reconciliation because of the passing of, say, a mom or a daughter. So in a situation where forgiveness isn't coming or cannot come, what words of encouragement would you give to a person that's in that position?
Right. If you have the situation where your mother or daughter is no longer in your life, we encourage you to write out a prayer, and what it would be saying to your mother, under God's protection of my heart, I'm choosing to forgive you. And, you would want to interject some things that God would uniquely show you about your situation, but we encourage you to say those words out loud and offer it as a prayer to God, just acknowledging the hard places of your heart that have been affected by the relationship with a mom or daughter. And, if you're someone who's mother or daughter is still living and you're just not sure or don't think it would ever happen, I just want to give you hope and encouragement that it can. Our job is to take care of the things that are in our hearts. We can't be responsible for someone else's actions. We can only take responsibility for ours. And we can live with hope that when we put ourselves out there, even if the person doesn't reciprocate your desire to be reconciled, it is still part of your responsibility to at least initiate it. And then if it's not reciprocated, ask God to heal those places where that reciprocation isn't coming into your heart. He has such a great ability to restore our hearts to the faithfulness of his own.